top of my head.
Oh, yeah. See, so yours comes out like that too. Oh. We have a dirty screen. Starting off with a black picture.
Amazing.
All right.
Do you need this link here? I don't know.
No, I can do it. I can get it from the app. Anyways, hello and welcome to our first ever live.
On YouTube.
On YouTube, because we've done tons of lives in the past. This is just the first one on YouTube. So there
Frank.
we go. There we go. Okay, let's save this. And I'm Abby.
And together, we are Frabby Farm.
Okay, we're the basic millennials that really thought it was that cool to ship our name together.
Yeah,
here we are.
That's terrible. I hate it.
Okay, so let me send this link. You might want to copy it.
Yep, I can share it too.
Perfect. Sorry, technical difficulties here. Okay. So I guess we'll start off with the disclaimer. Just personally, I prefer to get that disclaimer out there that we are not telling you to follow exactly in our footsteps. We are giving you our experience, our personal life story, and what we are going through, but there's no way that we expect you to do exactly what we're doing. But if you can learn from us, you can learn from our mistakes, and we'd rather that be what you learn from this. So to start off, let's start off with farm talk. So we have a couple different things. We've had a lot of questions about farming, and then we've had a lot of attacks about farming. So
let's start with the questions.
Start with the questions we have so far.
Attacks are more fun, so we'll wait for our friend to show up.
If you have any questions,
one of them.
Drop it in the chat, and we'll answer them as we go. But let's just start off with a little bit of the general idea, because a lot of people ask what our farm even is. Like, they're like, where's your farm? Can we come visit it? Like, we get a lot of those questions that they're like, oh, we want to come hang out with your chickens. Like, do you want to explain a little bit of what we have going on in our farm?
So we're basically suburban farmers. Any operation that we run that requires more than 10,000 square feet, we're going to be renting pasture or finding somebody that has land that they're willing to, that I can beg or barter for, and use for the season, basically. Other than that, the operations that we do have going here, as far as the garden, rabbits, laying hens, all that stuff, we'd really kind of take it as like a square foot approach. And we try to be as efficient with our space as possible while still raising animals the way that we think is good for them to be raised. The perfect example of that is our rabbits. So technically with our rabbits, we could pack a lot more rabbits into our backyard. We could do a vertical tiered cage system. We could make the cages smaller, that sort of thing. And that would allow us to have a lot more efficiency. But that doesn't match with our farming ethics, where we like our rabbits to be able to touch dirt, to dig tunnels, to be able to run around and have the zoomies. So our rabbits, instead of being kept in a 3 foot by 4 foot or cage, or some people even do smaller than that. Not judging, just saying.
No, I mean, because there's some people that really don't have a choice.
Right. But we do a 8x4 hutch that they can dig 3 feet down in, and they also have an upper tier they can jump up to. So that matches with our farming ethics better. So even though it's not the most space efficient thing to do, we analyzed the square footage, compared it to our ethics, and found a happy compromise. That's kind of our approach to suburban farming.
Yeah. Do you want to go over what animals we have, like inform them on what we actually have going on right now? Because right now we're on, you told them the lot size?
Yeah. So right now our lot, I believe, is right at about 10,000 square foot. Actually, it might be less. It might even be less than that. I think it is slightly less than that. I think it's about 8,000.
Last time we measured it was like 60 feet by 60.
Well, yeah, the backyard is roughly 60 by 60, which is 2,400 square foot,
right?
Which is like a 1/16 of an acre or something like that.
Yeah.
So pretty small territory that we're doing most of our actual work in. What was the question you asked?
What animals are we raising?
What
You got to
animals
keep
are we
track of
raising?
this, bro. I'm trying to do
I'm
two
so
things at
tired
once.
today. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Our so what animals are we raising? So we're doing laying hens.
Mhm.
Right now we have 5 of our older laying hens that are still laying that we've kept around, and we have 11 new laying hens that we're hoping that will start laying hopefully around the start of the farmers market. That would be nice.
Yeah.
We have 4 rabbits that are our breeders, and they're going to start breeding again soon. Now that we're kind of out of that spring craziness.
We have rabbits, chickens.
Yep, we have our meat chickens that they grow here for 4 weeks, and then we move them out to pasture. We have our koi fish in our koi pond.
I know all our animals, and I'm over here trying to keep
We-
track. So we have chickens,
We have
laying
a
hens,
dog,
meat birds. Then we have our rabbits, and then we have our koi fish, and then
Yep.
we have
Ralph.
Ralph.
Yeah.
There we go.
I believe that is everybody.
And everybody is spaced out perfectly. Now that is something we do want to like get a little bit better about showing you guys, like what that space, like how we've designed our space to like work the most efficiently for us. Because as of right now, we really do have like a perfectly like Lego square built, like a Minecraft square built farm where
Which-
everything is perfectly laid out.
To be clear, that's not necessarily
No.
the best way to do it. And actually, it's
Most people don't have a square backyard.
Well, our backyard could probably be laid out even better to work better with our shade patterns and where the sun goes up and down and that sort of thing to maximize our exposure and all that stuff.
We just got really excited when we first moved in.
Yeah. And now
We really
everything's
did.
where it's at and it's too heavy to move. So
Well, everything's kind of stuck. Like our rabbit cages are not going anywhere because they have little tunnels. So I guess we can go
Right.
into a little bit of that. So like how every single little bird lives. So we already went over our laying hens versus our meat birds.
yes.
So the meat birds, like he said, start off here for 4 weeks and then they head out. So they're in brooders, and you've probably seen them on a couple of the other videos that we have, and how they're raised in the brooder system we have. So it's just an enclosed box so that when they're only a couple weeks old, they can be completely protected from all the environmental crazy things we have here. So like yesterday it wasn't supposed to rain and I had to wake up at 2 a.m. because it started pouring, and I had to go make sure that like the water was not somehow seeping in, and there was like one strip of water where the little chicks were laying in the water. So I immediately fixed that, but the rest of our brooders are doing well. So we'll fix that and correct that. And then they go to pasture in our rabbit tractors, where we gained a lot of
Chicken
friends
tractors.
from. I always say rabbit tractors.
Always.
Chicken tractors. They're
Sheila says evening.
Good evening, you guys.
Good evening.
Our chicken tractors are very well protected from the elements. We're going to have to fix them a little bit this year because there's a couple holes in them from the hail last year, but they're doing good. So we have them in that. Then our rabbits are in our rabbit hutches. So they're pretty much just wire and then a little triangle dome at the end. So imagine wire and then like a little house situation. And then we have it buried, what is it, 2 or 3 feet down? It's somewhere between 2 and 3 feet down. And then the entire space, which is 8 by 4. And so they can dig completely underneath themselves.
So essentially they have 32 square feet to live in, another 32 square feet underground.
Right.
And then most of our hutches have a
upper layer
level too.
So where their little shelter is, they can go underneath it, or there's a little shelf where they can go above, and then they can look at everybody else and look at all the other animals.
And that's probably about 6. It's probably about 2 by 3, so about 6 square feet.
Yeah.
So most of our hutches have about 70 square feet for one rabbit.
Yeah. And we've tried to do a couple, like putting rabbits together. They don't do well with that. They're kind of loners. So they individually have that space.
The problem is they do well with it for a little while,
and then they just get angry at each other.
Yeah.
So
and especially when the moms start having babies, the boy bunnies just don't get along with that. They want to keep doing what boys want to do.
So we tried doing a colony
system,
system, but it just doesn't work out for us. There's some other people we've met that have like great colony systems.
Yeah.
I can't get past some of the like heartache you have to go through with colony systems. So we gave them mansions individually, which is honestly terrible. We could literally add so many more rabbits, but we're keeping it small. And then our goldfish. have an entire pond. We just stuck a literal hole in the middle of our yard, and they live happily in their pond. And the goldfish procreated. We're gonna have to get rid of goldfish now. And then
We have way too many.
we have way too many. They keep making babies, and they
We
keep
bought 3 and now we have 12. So
yeah, they overpopulate too much. So we're gonna get rid of them and just stick to our koi. And
Yeah.
then I think that's everybody. And then our laying hens just go wherever they want. They have their little coop. They have a little enclosure that they can hang out all day if they want. And then they have their little roosts at night.
we have a run built for them around their coop. So if we need to lock them up for some reason, they're protected from predators and all
Right.
that stuff. And they have enough room to, run and be happy. But we also have, most of the time we just leave that door open and they run around the yard and fertilize stuff for me.
Yeah.
Take care of all our kitchen scraps.
Yeah.
What other questions we have?
Okay, so let's get on to the questions. So hopefully that gives you guys a better idea of what we have going. Also, Ralph is a free range dog. He gets to go wherever he wants. It's mostly inside. And then he occasionally goes to the neighbors' houses and wanders around. Ralph is our doggo. Okay, let me pull up these notes. Okay, cool. All right, so let's start off with the farming ones. So how do you start farming in the suburbs?
Small.
Yeah, small and well planned.
Yeah. So everybody wants to jump in and do everything all at once. I would highly, highly recommend doing a garden before you do anything with live animals. And start small. Because I think that was one of the first mistakes we made is we did like 8 raised beds our first year. And we did not have the planning. We did not have it together.
It was a lot.
A lot of that went to waste because we didn't have the facilities to can all that. We didn't have the equipment or anything.
We didn't have the hail cloth. So at that point, we didn't have the financial ability to put hail cloths on everything. So we lost a lot of our.
Yeah, we lost a lot of it to hail. Some of it got wasted. A lot of it we just ended up giving away so it wouldn't get wasted. So even though we harvested a lot from that garden, even with all that poor planning, it could have been a lot better. So I would recommend starting out with like 1 or 2 raised beds.
And then if you really enjoy it, go from there.
Yeah. If you decide to do raised beds, if you're in a place you can do a plot in the ground, that's great.
I recommend pumpkins. Do pumpkins. And what's the other one? Like watermelons and cantaloupes are pretty easy, but pumpkins. Just start off with pumpkins.
what I always recommend, don't go bigger than like a 10 by 10 garden, like 100 square feet of garden is plenty for anyone. Plant stuff. Like it's exciting to go in the seed center and be like, oh, what's this? I've never seen this before. Let's plant a whole bunch of it. And then you eat the first one. You're like, wow, this is terrible. Like
we literally did that.
Yes. So so plant stuff that you're actually going to eat. Probably one of the best things you can do if you're not feeling very bold and don't want to do like a full 10 by 10, plant a little herb garden.
Yes.
Plant cilantro.
That's actually where we started.
Where's my hands? So cilantro, thyme, rosemary, dill, oregano, basil, those sorts of things. Even if it's just those 6, just plant a garden with those things. Get used to growing plants, watering them, setting up your beds, all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's
a great start.
If I had to do it again, that's how I would.
Well, it's a great start because I guess a little bit of background. We actually started gardening before we had our house. We started gardening in our apartment up in Castle Rock, and we actually had an entire full window garden. And that's what we started with was herbs and completely just basic things like lettuces and stuff like that we could grow in little pots in the windowsill. And then we did a tomato plant because we were bold. We grew an 11 foot.
We bought a bucket about. Man, I keep wanting to go this way because it's mirrored. We bought a bucket about yay big, filled about yay tall, filled it with dirt, and Abby grew a 11-foot
tomato plant. So that was
we just
fun.
Kept trellising it up the wall because at the time we had no idea you're supposed to like cut the tops off of tomatoes so it makes the tomatoes bigger.
I was just like, my tomato wants to grow tall. Let's let it grow tall.
So we bought it like a beefsteak tomato, and the tomatoes were only like cherry tomatoes. So
it was great.
Yeah.
But we ended up with the herbs, and we carried that too when we moved into our rental space.
Yeah.
So that's where we actually started. So I highly recommend starting with a garden, like Frank said. And then the second step we took from that was actually going into rabbits. So we started with our garden, started with herbs, then went into plants, and we started a small raised bed garden in that backyard.
Everyone wants to raise chickens first.
I don't. Mm-mm.
Chickens are good. I think chickens are great, actually, especially
Yeah.
just laying hens.
They're easy.
And they are very easy. That they're not nearly as high maintenance, and you don't have to worry about animal husbandry and things like that. So,
Right.
in that sense, they are good. They also take care of a lot of kitchen scraps. They're kind of composters that way.
Yeah.
So if you have a garden, chickens can complement it real well. The downsides are that you do need to build a coop for them,
Yeah.
and that can be expensive.
That, and then if you're going to protect them, if you have, so we're in, like we said, a suburb. So like we have less predators. So if you actually have farmland, or if you have land at all, you're going to have predators that come in and out of your property.
You're going to have
and
bigger,
you're gonna have
more
to
aggressive
have,
predators depending on where you're at. So for us, we just have to deal with
raccoons.
Birds
family of raccoons down the street.
Birds of prey, raccoons, skunks. Those are really the biggest threats that we have.
The bitterness I have towards raccoons, you can literally tell.
If you live out in the country somewhere, you might have to worry about mountain lions, coyotes, bears, depending on where you're at.
One of our friends literally had a bear get all of her chickens.
So you kind of have to bear proof like that. Build a coop that can withstand a bear, basically. And that can be expensive, time consuming, all that stuff.
Fun fact, if you do have a bear come attack you, just talk to the wildlife. Who is it?
Well, here's the CPW, Colorado Parks and Wildlife.
Yeah. Everybody has parks and wildlife around them, and they usually have bear-proof stuff. So anyways, just throwing that in. So moving on to rabbits.
Yeah. So I actually recommend rabbits for a lot of people that are starting out.
So much easier.
They are easier. The animal husbandry aspect is fairly easy because they breed like rabbits, especially if you bought good stock to begin with. Space wise, if you're in a situation where you can't do like a colony or an in-ground system like we have going, you can literally raise rabbits in your garage.
Yeah,
lots of people have done it.
There's lots of our friends that do it and stuff.
Yeah. The fertilizer is absolutely amazing. Rabbit manure is like some of the best stuff, and it's also considered a cool fertilizer, so you can apply it directly to plants. Chicken manure has to be composted before you can put it in your garden. Otherwise, it can burn the roots and cause issues because it's considered a hot fertilizer. It's too nutrient rich, and when it starts to compost, it puts off a lot of heat, so it can literally and figuratively burn your plants.
Yeah.
Rabbit manure is not that way. Rabbit manure is you can literally scoop it out, dump it on the plants, and you're good to go. Use your hands.
I think the difference between them, from my personal experience, is that like chickens are super easy because they kind of just take care of themselves. They go scratch, they eat. You just have to protect them from predators and stuff. With rabbits, where it becomes a little bit more difficult is in the actual feed. You have to be very cautious because they have very sensitive stomachs. Now, you can grow a stronger stomach within your flock of rabbits, or your, what is it called? I don't know. Because it's not a flock. They're not chickens.
They develop certain resistances. It's not that they'll suddenly be able to eat foods that they couldn't eat before, but they will develop certain resistances to different diseases and things that would otherwise be harmful. Right.
But they are very finicky. So like if you have kids that come out and hang out and stuff like that, and they're, for example, if they have they're eating a little granola bar and they're like, oh, this rabbit wants to eat it, they will immediately kill your rabbit. So you do have to be very cautious when it comes to what they are eating, and just inform people that come around of their sensitive stomachs, and just make sure that you're like, hey, you can feed you can feed the chickens whatever you want, but rabbits you do have to be a little bit more cautious with. And then when it comes to processing, I think the processing is the same. I think the actual byproducts of them are a little difficult when it comes to rabbits, because then you're having to tan hides. So chickens, you pluck the feathers and you can use them for any.
We tan hides. Most people that are processing rabbits don't bother tanning the hides, but
you can sell the hides unprocessed, and you can make money off of them. But for me personally, I think that is where it becomes a little bit more difficult, because tanning just takes more time. Whereas feathers, you can literally make any craft or whatever with feathers.
Tanning is very time and labor intensive, whereas feathers are just kind of pull them out and they're ready. So
yeah.
Although one thing I do want to talk about a little bit is production. So a good laying hen will give you about 300 eggs in a year, which sounds like a lot until you realize it's not even quite an egg a day. So if you have 3 laying hens that are producing 900 eggs a year, you're not quite eating three eggs a day, which might not even be enough for like a family of 4 or something. You're
The
certainly
general
not
rule
selling
is
any.
to have 1 laying hen per egg that you need. So like I eat 2 eggs, Frank eats 2 eggs, have 4 laying hens, and that'll give you the bare minimum.
Yeah. Whereas with rabbits are extremely productive, where a trio of rabbits, one buck and 2 does, can give you, I believe it's a little bit over 300 pounds of meat per year.
I'm over here shocked, and I knew this.
Which is kind of, it's comparable to like 2 goats or something like that. So they're very, very productive. And are you good? Okay. But yeah, rabbits are very, very productive, much more so than chickens, and even more so considering that rabbits take up a lot less space. So that's kind of why I recommend it, because you do have, rabbits are, sorry, I'm so distracted. So rabbits can be one of the only actual meat sources that you can produce on your homestead. A lot of homesteads, you can't run pigs, you can't run any sheep, goats, any bigger, certainly not cows if you're in the suburbs. So no bigger animals. Rabbits and chickens are your options for meat, and rabbits are much easier to process at home with home equipment. Chickens are a real pain to pluck. They take forever to pluck.
Once you get the plucker, it makes it so much easier.
But again, that's a $500 investment.
But that's what I was saying. Like the difference between raising chickens versus rabbits, that's where it starts getting a little bit harder. So if you want to use the hide, it goes into
the byproducts.
It goes into a little harder work, and it takes a lot of skill that you learn over time. Anybody can gain it. It's just very slowly learn things that we've learned. But then I love making stuff out of furs. Like I love the furs that we've had. I've made the most beautiful things ever from them.
But depending on your situation, you might not be a seamstress. You might not have the stomach to sit there and scrape hides. You might not have the time to turn your hides 3 or 4 times a day when they're soaking.
Yeah.
It might not be
feasible for you.
Yeah, the right choice.
So that's the difference between the two. If you want an animal that does not need anything and will survive everything, get koi fish. Our koi fish are so easy. So easy. Okay. So we covered all that. What animal would you suggest starting with? I suggest rabbits.
I suggest rabbits as well.
Mm-hmm. How much does it cost to raise chickens or rabbits? Do we know that off the top of our heads?
So, well, it depends on how many you have, first of all.
Yeah.
For my 3 rabbits, I buy 1 bag of 50-pound feed, and that'll last them about 2 weeks. For all 4 of them.
And that's factoring in that 2 of them eat 1 cup of food and the other 2 eat half a cup. So 3 cups of food.
When they're breeding actively, we have multiple litters of rabbits coming out. Depending on what stage they're at, we can be going through a bag in less than a week, like 3 to 4 days, we can go through a bag. Because if you think about it, each rabbit is producing a litter of 8. So you went from having 4 rabbits to 20 rabbits.
8 per hutch.
So yeah, they are smaller, but they're hungry. They go through quite a bit of feed.
Yeah.
So that can be, it can add up, but at the end of the day, rabbit meat is also expensive, so it's still cheaper to do it yourself. Yeah. And on top of that, there's a lot of stuff you can do if you're willing to do a little bit of foraging, or you have a lawn that's got some good tall growing grass or anything like that. You can supplement some of that feed yourself as well.
So we feed our chickens less, but we also have double the amount of. We feed our rabbits less, but we have double the amount of chickens. And then the chickens can forage anywhere and eat kitchen scraps. So if you factor that in, technically chickens would be cheaper. But rabbits don't cost that much at all. And you really do get a lot of meat. Okay.
As far as chickens go, chickens usually have a 2.5 to 3.5 feed to weight ratio. So in other words, for every 2.5 to 3.5 pounds of food that they eat, they'll put on 1 pound of body. This is for meat chickens, by the way. They'll put on 1 pound of body weight. So for like the Cornish crosses and stuff like that, it's closer to the 2.5. For Freedom Rangers, it's closer to the 3.5. So if you think you have say an 8-pound chicken, that's going to dress out at about 70%. You're probably looking at roughly a 5-pound chicken, somewhere in there. After all the guts and everything have been taken out, that chicken will have eaten somewhere between 24 to 30 pounds of food by itself. So then you do your cost per pound. So if your feed is 50 cents per pound, you figure your chicken weighed, say, 10 pounds when you butchered it, to make the math easy. Your chicken weighed 10 pounds. It had a feed conversion ratio of 3, which means it ate 30 pounds of food. Your feed was 50 cents a pound. It cost you $15 to raise that chicken.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. So we got one that said, okay, let's stick to the money for a sec, since we're on that track. How much money do we make selling chickens or rabbits?
Rabbits, we haven't done a whole lot of selling yet. Chickens, I can tell you
we have sold a couple, but
I don't pay my wife. And I make about $7 an hour selling chickens. So when we
how much money did we make last year?
Let's
be real.
Negative. We were in the negatives last year.
We made negative $2.
Yes, something like
roughly
that. An hour.
We both lost $1 an hour.
So
this year, now we are going to be making
$7 an hour.
$7 an hour.
Boy.
And I'm not getting paid, so he's making $7 an hour.
So yeah, and the way that kind of breaks down, our biggest cost is our feed. We talk to a lot of our customers. They really, really want the organic stuff.
We want organic,
non-GMO. We want it too. It's just expensive. We have to, again, because we lost money last year, we have to raise our prices.
So that we're not actually losing money and it just breaks even this year.
But our feed costs about 78.5 cents per pound. We go through like 8,000 pounds of feed to raise our chickens.
These are just the meat birds.
Yeah. And in addition to that is the cost of driving to the pasture that we're going to, the gas, the wear and tear, brakes, tires, all that.
For renting the pasture. Again, we only have a suburb house.
The cost of renting the pasture, the cost of our time, all that stuff. It adds up pretty quickly. So this year we're raising 300 chickens and we're hoping to profit $2,000 at the end of the farming season.
And that'll really go back into.
And this is just kind of us
into their house.
Yeah, it's literally going to just get reinvested into the farm again.
Mm-hmm.
So why even bother, right? And I think the reason that we're doing this is because
we're crazy.
But in these first beginning years, we're really just building a customer base. We don't want to raise 1,000 chickens and then just have freezers and freezers full of chickens that we can't move because we don't have customers to move them to.
Mm-hmm.
So like we sold out of chickens last year. Great. We're doing the same number again this year. We didn't sell out last year until end of December, beginning of January, something like that.
But that was like literally we started late in the farm season. So our farmers market was, we started a couple minutes late. And then on top of that, we had to introduce that into the farmers market because at ours, at least, they didn't have any chickens.
So this year that's another thing that adds into our costs is our farmers market fees and all that, which our farmers market's very, very reasonable, especially compared to a lot of the ones that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
But it's adds up.
Mm-hmm.
Credit card fees, all that stuff. So anyway,
I'm going to toss this in real quick. If you are doing it for your family, it is so much more cost effective than what we're currently doing. For me and Frank to raise our meat for the year, if we eat one chicken a week, we just have to raise 52 chickens.
Yeah.
And at that point, it really is way cheaper to raise them ourselves than it is to actually buy them from the store. And then it's very high quality meat.
Yes.
But you have to factor in taking and processing 50 birds. And right now we're processing what?
So if you're just, we're going to be processing 300 for the.
No, I know. But like how much time does it take for us to raise them and process them ourselves? Like, so they have a little bit of an idea.
Oh, so depending on what breed you raise, it'll take anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks to grow out. The actual processing time when you first start is probably going to take like 15 to 20 minutes
But
per
it
chicken.
quickly and rapidly gets faster as you do
As
it.
you get more efficient, we've gotten it down to where we're a couple minutes.
I think we're like at a minute a
chicken.
bird.
Yeah, something like
We're
that.
pretty good at it.
Yeah.
So if you factor that in, you're talking 50 minutes to invest in actually putting those birds in the freezer and packaging them, all of that. So I would say like 2 hours to do all of them on one day, especially if you have a lot of help
Yeah.
around and stuff. If it's just yourself, I would, up that to 4 hours. But yeah, it's one of the easiest things to do. And if you're doing it for your family, it is definitely cost effective for sure. We are just starting on the route to actually sell chickens. So that kind of explains why, it's so easy for places that are huge and sell massive amounts of birds to, this sounds rude, but lose their ethics and actually start raising them in barns because it's so much easier. You don't have to factor in the weather. We had so many storms last year that we were so worried about our birds the entire time. And you don't have to factor in like the moving them like we do every day. So it's so much cheaper to raise thousands of birds. And we have realized that now. The more birds you raise, the cheaper it gets drastically.
Sheila wants to know which farmers market we go to. The Colorado Farm and Art Market. And we go to there's a Wednesday one and a Saturday one. We go to the Saturday one, and that's at the Margarita at Pine Creek.
Yeah. And if that changes,
Colorado
we'll update you guys.
It's where the carrots are.
We prefer that farmer's market. So there's some other good ones around, but as far as price goes, to keep it realistically attainable to farmers, they're actually pretty good at making sure it's low because they know that farmers don't make that much money. And then the farmers that are there have been farmers in this city for over 20 years. Like we've met so many farmers that are actually farmers that have been doing this since before we were born. Yeah. So they're amazing.
Going back to touching on what Abby had said a minute ago about raising it yourself. Mm-hmm. If you have the land to do it and you're willing to ignore a little bit of upfront cost in the infrastructure, you're going to have to invest in like brooders and tractors and stuff like that. You can probably raise your own chickens for like $4 to $5 a pound. Whereas we're selling ours for $7.50 a pound roughly. Mm-hmm. So it can be quite a bit cheaper if you're willing to put all that work in yourself. Again, the reason ours is more expensive is we're trying to make money, not break even. So we have to pay ourselves
$2.
We have to pay for the pasture. We have to pay for the gas to get out to the pasture. We have to pay for the farmers markets. We have to pay for the credit card fees. If you're able to ignore all that stuff and just raise it for yourself, you can do it quite a bit.
It's probably cheaper for a lot of you guys too, because I don't know if your guys' weather is as crazy as ours, but we literally have so many crazy storms. And if you guys follow us on social media, you will see the storms that we get that are so rapidly changing around here. Like today, it's so much fun. 50 degrees and it's freezing and it's supposed to be spring. Like it's supposed to be beautiful out. And it's not that we'll have snowstorms, we'll have hailstorms, we'll have random tornado warnings. Like it is crazy. So if you live in a normal area, then you don't have to add in all those extra costs to protect your chickens because you could literally just free range them. Also, you lose about 10% if you're just raising them however you want. You lose about 10%. So if you technically buy,
the industry average is between 5 and 10%.
So if it was me and Frank, we would be raising 50 birds for the year, 52 birds, and we would just add in that 10%. So we would order what? We would probably order 60 just to make sure.
Most hatcheries will add in an extra 5 to 10%. So if you order 25 birds, you'll actually get 26 or 27 in the shipping box, the shipping container. If you order 100, you'll get somewhere between like 105 and 110, something like that.
Okay, so let's keep going with these questions so that we don't just drag on forever. Hopefully we answered most of the questions. Those are the most questions that we've gotten so far is like about what we just covered. Those are the most frequently asked questions is like money and stuff like that when it comes to chickens and how to raise them in the meat. Okay. So the next three kind of go together. Do chickens have feelings? Is killing animals for food even ethical? Like, isn't it against the Bible? Oh, okay. I don't know what that was. And why don't you just become vegan?
Yes.
Do you want to cover that while I check on our needy dog?
Yes, absolutely. So don't chickens have feelings? It depends what you think feelings are. Chickens definitely do not have hopes, dreams, aspirations, like human beings do, right? If they have food, they have room to walk around a little bit, they have another chicken to stand around with, some dirt to bathe in, they seem pretty happy to me. And obviously this is hard because it's not like you can go up to a chicken and be like, hey, how you doing today, Joe? Like, is everything all right? Are you feeling self-actualized? Like, you can't ask chickens questions like this. So knowing the internal life of a chicken is obviously a little bit difficult. And yes, they do have feelings, as in they can react to sensations, they can feel things, but they don't have the emotional context like we do, where based on the studies that I've seen, the research that I've seen, it doesn't seem like chickens want for things, as in wherever they're at, that's just where they're at, and they're just making do with what they got. They might be feeling pain, they might not be feeling great about it, but it's not as though they're dreaming about being on a lush green pasture somewhere. They just know they don't like where they're at, if they are in a bad situation. Is killing animals for food ethical? Yes. Why don't you become? No. I'll touch on that a little bit more. So the alternative to
He does not know what he wants to do with his life today.
No, he doesn't. He sees we're up here and we're talking. He just wants to be a part of things, but he doesn't actually want to be up here. So
Bless you.
Again, it depends what you mean by ethics. It depends how you want to define it. One of the interesting things I see with vegans and vegetarians is that whenever they begin a discussion with someone who does eat meat, like let's just say an omnivore or a carnivore, whenever they begin a discussion, they start out from the place that animals should have the same or nearly the same rights as human beings. And I just don't see how that follows. There seems to be some kind of inherent assumption there that the internal life of livestock is similar to the internal life of a human, and therefore they deserve similar rights. And again, from what I've seen, from what I've raised, from the studies that I've seen, that just doesn't really seem to be the case. Like I said, livestock's not out in a pasture dreaming about the future. They're just dreaming about the next thing that they're going to eat or the next dust bath they're going to take. They're not, they don't set up SMART goals and 5-year plans and stuff like that. It's just not a thing that happens. So coming from that view, the other argument I've heard is that, do you have the right to take the life of another living creature? And that seems to me to be far too broad of a generalization, because if you wash your hands, you're using soap to kill thousands of living creatures, right? If you have an infestation of mice or rats and you trap some of them, well, you're killing those are living creatures too. So it seems like the line for most vegans and vegetarians as to what constitutes a living creature is basically what I can see and what I think is cute, right? And that seems to be a very subjective place to draw that line. But in either case, we'll tighten the definition up a bit and say, is it ethical to take the lives of livestock, right? And I think it absolutely is. First of all, I don't see, based on all the nutritional research and stuff I've done, this is another argument I see all the time, is that, hey, it's the 21st century, you can live a vegan lifestyle and you can be perfectly healthy. And the research research doesn't really support it.
I think it's a personal choice for sure. And I respect their choice. But I
absolutely. I respect everyone's choice to do whatever they want as far as their diets are concerned.
Right.
And I think that absolutely, like, I'm not going to force anyone to eat meat, but at the same time, humans have been eating meat for, as long as you think humans have been around, hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of years or whatever.
I think honestly, they come from a place. They come from a place where they really do see like the industry and how poorly treated they are. But I think
a lot of veganism is a knee-jerk reaction to CAFO operations, confined animal feeding operations.
Right.
And that's just not the kind of way that we're raising animals here.
Yeah, but for us, it's a little different. So there's been two different types of interactions we've had. We've had real life interactions with vegans and then online interactions. The online interactions are very cruel, very abrupt, very angry, and very bitter. There's no room for conversation.
It's usually like kicking the door in, screaming murder, or throwing blood on the walls and leaving. It's just,
but people that we have met in real life that are like, hey, we're like, we don't want to sell you this. We understand that you're vegan. You know, we'll respect your decision and thank you for telling us that you cannot buy our product. But then we have lovely conversations with them where they're like, okay, but what you showed us of how you're raising your animals, I would highly consider eating meat again if all meat was treated like that. But you cannot supply all the meat that I need in that same manner. And I was like, our goal is to, but we will never be able to do that. I personally think that that's why homesteading is the way to go. And like have people that are in the neighborhood that can handle that be your main farmers for like little areas. But I don't think we should ever get to the point where we're that big. So that's a little tidbit for us is we will never become that big that I cannot individually take care of each animal and give them the time they need, because to me, they're more important than making more money. Because right now we could technically up our production drastically and make a lot of money drastically and fast. But we would lose a lot of what makes us us and
the personal touch.
Yeah. And our personal integrity in it. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Back to what I was saying a second ago about diet is that from everything I've seen, it's impossible to live a vegan lifestyle and not supplement with something. Maybe,
I mean, there are people out there that
maybe for short periods of
time. That's what I'm saying, because I don't want you to feel like I don't want anybody to feel like we're attacking them. There are vegans really out there that really do have very strong. The thing is, you have to be able to have.
I'll put a lot of caveats.
Now we're arguing over here.
I'm not arguing. You're just talking over me. But I'm sure there's vegans out there that can live a 100% vegan lifestyle and sustain it and not take any supplements. What I'm saying is that is very rare and they're very few and far between.
You have to have a lot of study for how to do it.
There's many more vegans that can pull it off, but they also have to supplement with multivitamins. They have to do blood work to figure out where they're deficient in certain nutrients and take those vitamins. And it's a very delicate process, and it's not an attainable lifestyle for a lot of people that don't have that option available.
Well, the people that are not doing supplements, that's what I was saying, is that like they're eating a lot of mushrooms, they're eating a lot of specialty foods that are not attainable to everybody because they're imported foods.
A lot of them eat fish too, which if you're going to eat meat, if you're very, very opposed to eating meat and you don't want to eat meat, at least eat fish, because fish are jerks. Anyway.
Anyways, let's move on, because I don't want anybody to feel like we're attacking meat. I never want to get to the point where I feel like I'm attacking somebody and saying, hold on.
There's one other question I didn't.
No, I wasn't going to go over that one.
Okay.
I just don't want anybody to feel like we're like, do it how we're doing it. Stop being vegan, eat meat. Like, no, that is not, that's what it started to sound like. And I'm like, I don't want my vegan friends to be like, oh, Frank is like telling me I'm wrong and I will never live like this. Like, no, there are successful vegans, but not everybody has that opportunity to do it, because it takes a lot of education and money to be.
It takes education, which takes time. It takes effort, which takes time, and it takes resources, which some people do not have. And in those cases, those people may be better off supplementing with a meat, at least fish, because fish are jerks.
Okay. Anyways, moving on. I think that's all of the farm questions. Does anybody else have any questions about farms? Why don't you look like a farmer? Why don't we look like farmers? That is one of the.
I think we do. What does a farmer look like?
I don't know. That's one of the first questions we got in the farmers market.
Yeah.
Was that somebody was like, you don't look like a farmer. Like, why don't you look like a farmer? And we got that question several times. And I was like, I don't know what a farmer's supposed to look like.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty funny, honestly. And I think that's more reflective of the person asking it. It's almost like someone coming in and being like, why don't you look like this certain racial group you look like you should belong to? You know, why don't you, like, it's almost like that, but for an occupation. Like they almost expect to come in and they see Frabby Farm and they're expecting me to wear overalls that are smeared with cow.
Well, we do wear
manure
overalls.
and-
They're just really clean overalls, like really clean.
I have a specific pair of farmers market overalls. That's the only place they go.
Well, not only that, is that as soon as he gets like any farm clothes that starts getting really tattered and worn and stuff like that, if I can't fix it, if I can't clean it, I will immediately, like if he has holes in his outfits, I will immediately tear him. And he gets mad every single time because I will rip pants that have holes.
Because they're still fixable.
Yes, and I do not want to take the time.
Okay.
My time is worth more than spending an hour fixing a pair of pants I can replace for
At
20
least
bucks.
you realize it.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. People are actually getting a general idea of like how we communicate with each other, because like
Aggressively.
not really.
Go,
Not
go,
really,
go.
because it's
Next,
not really
next,
argue.
next,
We really
next,
don't fight,
next,
do we?
next,
Calm down. I'm gonna
next,
punch you.
Next.
Stop. No, I'm just kidding. We actually do kind of keep each other in check.
Vamoose.
All right. So do we want, oh gosh, now we have two. Somebody give me an opinion here, because I don't know which one to go on. We have two. We are at a fork in a road and we can choose one or the other. We can talk about our fertility choices and where we go to church or what religion we are.
Mm.
Mm. Tell Siri to flip a coin.
What's heads
Heads.
gonna be?
Heads will be Jesus. Jesus. Head will be Jesus, because he's you know, the first in everything. He's head. I'm the tail. Mm. That was cringy.
Flip a coin.
Ah, that's not the one I wanted. Flip a coin. Flip a coin. Okay, so we'll go to
I had my silent mode on, but it was heads.
It was heads. Okay, so man, so this is one that we haven't really shared. We have had a lot of questions, and I tried to stay away from it completely and completely avoid every single question that
Because
has to do
people
with
are easily
religion.
offended.
People are very easily offended. They feel very attacked and very
I
protective of what they believe in, which I totally believe. And
think what a lot of it,
I like that they do that. But
what a lot of it is, if I'm in a group, and then I decide I'm going to leave that group, and I feel like I have good reasons and good justifications for leaving that group, everybody that still chooses to remain in that group for whatever reasons they may have, they feel as though my justifications for my personal reasons for leaving are also attacks on their reasons for staying.
and that's not the case at all.
That's not the case.
Okay, so well, don't dive into it if they have no idea what we're talking about right now.
Sure.
So let's start off with the fact that we believe at least in Jesus. Like we literally were both raised in church. Yeah, pretty much the same. Like we were both born and raised in a church. Our moms were both in church. Our dads both.
All that.
Our dads both left the church when we were teenagers
Yeah.
and completely like went astray, and our moms stayed in the church. And then we grew up in pretty much the same belief system, the same religion. Sorry, not the religion, because Christianity is pretty much what we are. We fall under, but the denomination that we were both raised in, it was very, very similar. I stayed in it. I literally grew up, and my dad and mom, before he left church, were going to be pastors and all that. And we were supposed to be pastoring, and he had worked towards it. And then an incident happened. This is TMI, but an incident happened where my dad actually got his licensing taken away. And they told us we were no longer allowed to pursue that because my brother had gone to prison. So that might be a little bit too much information for you, but I figured I would share because it gives you a little bit of backstory. Frank's dad also left. His was different than mine. It was just he decided to head out because of the knowledge he had found and the disagreeing he found within his leadership.
Yeah. Basically, he read his Bible. He had questions. Those questions, the people that were in leadership at the time were not able to satisfactorily answer those questions. So
he went on a journey to find whatever he was looking for, and went on that journey for a very long time. He's still on that journey.
Aren't we all?
Aren't we all? But yeah, so we were both raised in church, and we do we have the same upbringing, like very closely. Watch the same shows, watch the same movies. Grew up very very strict. So I feel like I always step on toes and like I'm stepping on eggs right now. The most recent thing that we've had is this year we had a lot of time reflecting and praying and stuff within the last couple of years. And this year we decided to embark on a journey. I followed him because he is my husband, and I saw.
And I left the church we were in.
To say it simply.
Yes.
But
You're like doing this.
I know, because I hate talking about this stuff. Like it just, I hate this stuff. It's like walking on eggshells. But for me personally, I saw the experience of both of our moms staying within a foundation that they had, that they both believed in, and none of them followed my dad, and they're our dads, and the results were the exact same. So we saw a broken family. We saw our families break apart. We saw a lot of heartache come from it. We saw them staying together because they didn't think they could split off. So they stayed together, and we lived through terrible, like teenage things where it was just seeing them argue back and forth so much because of that decision. So I
mean, saying it's so terrible is a bit of an exaggeration, but it could have been better. I'll just say that. But I mean,
I consider
myself very blessed to have had two parents growing up.
Yeah,
and I'm sure you feel the same way.
And our dads did stay obliged to, or they felt obliged to stay until we were at least 18 to split off, and they did. But there was a lot that happened within that. So when he decided to move on, we had a lot of conversations back and forth with our leadership, and
lots of prayer, lots of fasting,
lots of conversations with each other,
lots of Bible reading, lots of discussions.
And we agreed to disagree with what we were doing, but he did let us go, and he left his arms wide open for us, and we're still really good friends with everybody, a lot of people, but we also don't want to make anyone feel like our choice again should be their choice. So
right. My reasons are my reasons, and no one else needs to feel that I'm attacking their reasons for having my reasons to do things. So.
Yes, and they stayed and we did not. But it's been interesting. I have learned a lot. We have learned drastically a lot about different religions, and then underneath that, different denominations and what they all believe. So it's been an interesting learning journey this year.
So wait. So we left the church that we'd been a part of. So now we're backsliders, right? We've fallen away from the faith.
That is the one. I'm going to take that. Stop.
We've disavowed God.
No, stop. Okay.
We've blasphemed against the Holy Spirit, never to be forgiven. Is that accurate? Is that what we're doing?
No, you need to stop.
Okay.
No. Okay. Let's see if we have any other questions within that question. Did it get deleted or something? They're all gone. I don't know where all the questions went for that. Well, we had some questions about religion. So
what are we doing instead?
What are we doing instead of the questions?
Since we're not backslidden. Stop.
We're not backslidden.
I know we're not.
This stuff makes me uncomfy. Anyways, okay. So let's get back on track. So the questions that we had, if I can vaguely remember, let me see if I have some of them like memorized, but it was, a lot of them about faith. So a lot of people really don't bring up religion itself, and a lot of people don't bring up denominations themselves when talking to us and stuff like that. We really don't make it a point, like in farmers markets and stuff like that, to be like, hey, let's have a big theological discussion right now. Like, they're just like, okay, well, what got you into farming? What got you into raising chickens and stuff like that? And actually, a lot of the stuff that got us into farming kind of went side by side with infertility, which kind of leads into the next question. The church thing is hard. If you guys want to know more, definitely feel free to DM us, but we're not in a place. You might be. I don't actually know. I should ask you. But I'm not in a place to share more information as much about that because we still are learning. We still have no idea.
We're on a journey right now, trying out different churches, going to different places, seeing who preaches things that I can jive with the Bible. And basically just on a journey of exploration, seeing who's actually teaching the Bible and who we can get along with.
Yeah, there's been a couple weird churches that we visited.
There's been a
So,
lot of really good ones too.
for the people that are watching this, then you will have known, because we literally have not shared this with anyone. We have kept it kind of to ourselves and our closest friends, because it just brings up a lot of questions. Like it does bring up so many questions, and I don't want it to open up a door for people that want to start diving into deep theological debates. And I'm not that type right now. I'm just like going with the flow. Yes, that's why I have to tell them to stop, because I am not that type. I'm very docile when it comes to stuff like that.
We're going to talk about IVF.
The IVF and the adoption kind of go.
So the reason we
hand
got
in hand.
into farming initially was because of infertility. We've been married for.
Did the chicken or egg come first? Because they kind of went like side by side.
Kind of same. But long story short, we've been married. If you don't know, we've been married for 10 years.
We've been married for 12 years, going on 12 years this year.
Like I said, the first time, we've been married for 12 years. Haven't been on birth control.
The entire time.
And
there's no babies.
Still no kids.
Yeah. So we started asking questions, because we're like, okay, let's start. First of all, let's dive into the Bible and see what it says about infertility. Like, does it become something where there's some pretty radical religions out there that, or denominations out there that really do believe that, like, the more money they're out there, the more money you give, the more God will give you what he wants. And I was like, okay, the Bible doesn't say that. Like, that's not what I read. So like, there have been cases of infertility, and I always go back to the Bible to find my answers. And I read all the stories of infertility, and I was like, okay, at this point, we started looking at like what we're doing wrong as humans to create this vicious cycle of not being able to have kids. So we started looking into how our health was, our diets were, our exercising, and like all the different things. So we started literally researching what causes infertility and dove pretty deep into that.
Yeah.
Discovering all the sicknesses that have now come over the years and have appeared over the years because of our food. And as we were diving into that on my end, where I was like, okay, well, Frank wants a child. So what can we fix in our lives? How can I better our household so that we can actually have food and stuff that will help us become more fertile? And in that journey, Frank was on the farm side looking at how to raise meat for ourselves that was higher quality than the stores. And as we did more research, they kind of collided and started following parallel to each other, where it was very fascinating to find out that the things that he was choosing, like a simple one is the corn-free, soy-free feed. We discovered on my end that in order to help my fertility levels as a woman, I needed to avoid a lot of the corn and soy, because it unbalances your hormones. Now, this might not be everybody's case. For me personally, it was. And then I started diving deep again into more of why it was happening. So I started asking my mom, like, did you have any issues? Is anybody else in my family have any hereditary issues that I have to be aware of? Like, where can I go? And then obviously getting blood work and stuff done at the doctors, and then being like, oh, you're really healthy. And then I'm like, hey, could we look into
I'm really not.
Can we look into, scoot this way a little?
Which way?
This way. Can we look into like fertility? Because me and my husband have been married at the time when I had started diving into it. I think it was 5 years. I was like, we've been trying to have kids. We stopped birth control 2 years into our marriage. So like, what could be happening? Like, is there anything wrong? And I'm only bringing this up because we have a lot of questions that are like, have you tried this?
Yeah.
At this point,
have you tried IVF? No, we're broke. Have you tried adoption? No, we're broke.
Which is funny.
Have you tried the doctor? No, we're broke.
No, so
I tried growing a garden. I can afford a $2.99 packet of seeds. If that doesn't fix it, then I can't do it.
No,
I'm kidding.
Which is funny, because it is really true. Like, we did start boiling down to stuff like that, because we would tell the doctor, and I was like, hey, do you have a specialist that we can go to? Because at the time, like, we really did have like good insurance. We were getting paid very well at that time.
We literally had a doctor that we went to, and we asked for a specialist, and they were like, no, you're
too young. You're too young. You're going to be fine. Don't worry about it until you're 30, and then start questioning it. And I was like, no, because if there's something that can heal me now, I can start eating those things now to fix it for future Abby, right? And she was like, no, you're fine. All your markers are great. And then we went to the next one, and he was just like, no, you're healthy. I was like, okay, I don't know to this day what ethnicity he was. I did not know what he was saying most of the times, and he was just like,
He's like a Russian dude, wasn't he?
I have no idea. But he literally, like, I was like scared going in there, and then he was just like, no, you're fine, go.
No, I'm good.
Yeah, pretty much.
Goodbye.
Then the third doctor,
That's the
like,
idea.
this is literally a series of events with all our doctors. The third doctor, same thing, kind of shoot us away.
Mhm.
The I think the latest and most recent one, because we just,
Really wanted that pap smear, but had no interest in the infertility.
oh my goodness, she literally tried so hard. And I'm like, okay, but I don't smoke. I researched into it. I was like, I don't smoke. Usually it comes from this. It's usually multiple sex partners and stuff like that. I don't have that issue.
Yeah,
Like, I literally married my first boyfriend.
Zero of the risk factors associated.
And then she was like, okay, well, let's do a bunch of blood work. And then it came back and she was like, no, you're fantastic. Everybody has told me my blood work is fantastic. So I was like, okay, at this point, if a regular normal doctor that we keep going to is just going to keep brushing us under the rug and leaving us alone, we have to get a specialist. Unfortunately, specialists cost quite a bit of money. So just to even start diving into these conversations and stuff like that, I got overwhelmed. And so I literally was like, okay, I cannot try to talk to another doctor to try to push me to talk to somebody else. So it was just a lot. So we decided to
self-treating essentially via food. I think
it's not even self-treating at this point. It's literally eating healthy. Because I was like, what are we going to do when we go to the doctor?
Eating healthy is a treatment.
They're going to be like, hey, you just need to make sure that you're eating healthy. You're eating veggies, you're eating meat, you're eating this. And so I was like, well, we can cut out that conversation completely by just fixing what we're eating. And on top of that, I did find out a lot of information from my mother and my aunts and stuff like that with the issues that they had having babies. And so I dove deep into that and found out a lot of heartbreaking things, honestly. Like, for a lot of the sicknesses we currently have because of food and because of how our animals are raised.
Turns out if you raise animals in
poor conditions,
terrible, stressful conditions, some of those bad hormone imbalances and inflammation and stuff that they have can get passed on. So
who knew? So we started learning about a lot of that. And then I was like, okay, well, hereditary is important, right? Like learning about what you're prone to if your family has it. So endometriosis was a big one. And I started looking at all the red flags. And I literally, what I did was I was like Googling every infertility sickness that there's possible between men and women. It was bad. And I was literally going down the checklist and I'm like, okay, this one doesn't apply to me. This one doesn't apply to me. I've never had this happen. The one that was literally green flag after green flag and green check mark after one another, down to the bottom one where I was like, I have literally checked every single box on this, was endometriosis. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that don't know a lot about it. It is just, like he said, an inflammatory thing that happens in your reproductive system because of an unbalance of hormones. And they don't have an actual cure for it.
They can go in and cut stuff out, but
the two options you have are they can come in with they can poke a little hole in your tummy and go in there with a little camera and pull out a tiny bit of the tissue and get it tested. The next one is an intrusive surgery where they can actually go in and scrape out all of the tissue that's growing in your reproductive system where it's not supposed to be. Again, test that tissue, but it comes out as your tissue, like nothing's wrong with it. And then the third option I have as a lovely woman in the world is to get a hysterectomy. And if all the symptoms go away, then I had endometriosis. And those are our solutions to find it. So I can right now probably go into it and start spending about $25,000 for them to start going through and doing all the research and development on my body to see if I have endometriosis, but they can't guarantee an answer. The one answer I could guarantee is that a lot of women got rid of it themselves. And I went to the source. I started talking and having conversations with women who got rid of it themselves, had babies themselves because the doctors would ignore them. And I went about that route. While Frank went on the route of finding out about our food and how terribly it is grown. And our conversations were just kind of insane finding out, because he would be like, hey, you know, when you eat corn and soy in your food, like if you're eating eggs that are raised on corn and soy, that completely goes.
A lot of the phytoestrogens in soy get passed through the chicken's reproductive system into the egg, and then it messes with your estrogen levels in your body, because phytoestrogens that are found in soy are basically a fake estrogen, and it just throws things haywire. So eating chickens that are fed soy, eating the eggs of chickens that are fed
more so
soy,
the eggs than the meat,
can really mess. Can, not for everyone. Some people are perfectly fine. so happy for you, but it can really mess with your hormones.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people out there with PCOS, endometriosis, and then there's a couple new ones that they're uncovering endometriosis and all that are different.
We've been going for an hour. Do we want to start wrapping up?
Yep, for sure. So that gives you a little bit more of an idea of like a lot of the questions we've had, and hopefully that answers.
And as a
so
less
many.
sarcastic answer to why don't we adopt or something like that.
Oh yeah, we have a lot of questions of why have you considered IVF? Have you considered adopting? Have you asked people to give you a baby? And then have you prayed to God to give you a baby? Those have been our
we've considered all of those things.
Yes.
Right now, because we're still on this.
I have not considered stealing a baby. A lot of people suggested that.
I don't know how to respond to that.
Okay, so let's break it down. IVF? Your opinion?
No, I consider IVF to be unethical.
Interesting. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm still developing my thoughts on it because technically they are taking your babies, the eggs, and they are fertilizing them. And as soon as they become babies, and they actually, again, this is a deep conversation, they're fertilized eggs, then they implant them in your body. If you get it successfully implanted, the rest of them get disposed of. So I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know how I feel about it being.
So here, I don't know. Where I stand on it is that if life begins at fertilization. So once you have a fertilized egg, that can potentially be a life. And if you're yes, you can have fertilized eggs that just pass through the reproductive tract and those will die. But that's sort of part of the natural cycle. If you're not doing anything to facilitate that, then there's no murder happening. If you're purposely fertilizing a group of eggs and then purposely throwing some of those perfectly viable eggs away, to me, that's ethically problematic.
Also, it's $27,000 just to start. It's $27,000. So I don't even want to go there. So as far as adoption goes, again, the expense is another major if somebody blessingly comes and is like, take my child, it's still $10,000 to transfer all the paperwork and stuff, starting off legal fees. And then going into full blown adoption again is about $27,000 at the starting point for these things. It's just the bare minimum to start even thinking about it. Like you're going to at least pay that much.
I think the real reason we're not going for either of those options right now
is money.
Not even money. What we're doing right now is basically to see if we can fix us.
Yes.
If it's possible to fix us naturally, and then move into we can move into those options later if we're like, you know what, there's nothing else that we could do to improve our health. This is as good as it's going to get. We're still not having a kid,
but at least I'm not going to get diabetes like a lot of my family, like a lot of my dad.
And that's the other discussion that's the other discussion we've had a lot too, is that a lot of these changes have improved our quality of life quite drastically. And they're changes that we would be making even if we already had kids or if we never wanted to have kids.
Well, at this point, if I can see,
we would be making,
if I can see how much I've suffered, and like I do have a baby that I adopt, or I do have a baby that I have and stuff like that, I don't want her to ever be in the position I am at 32 years old, like literally suffering, trying to get her health fixed. I will teach her what she needs to eat from the get-go so that she doesn't suffer. And like, obviously not torture her, like she can eat Oreos if she wants, but understanding that everything in moderation, right? So that's what's the last one. The last one is
I knew I forgot something.
There's been a couple other ones that are like, have you tried the basics of how babies are created? And we're like, yes. So how much information do you want? Yeah. So yes, we have prayed, but I also do believe that oh no, what?
The fact that we've been married for 12 years and there's people out there that think we don't know what sex is.
Yeah, I know. Literally. I'm like, oh gosh. Okay. Anyways. This was one of the biggest questions, and it's the one that I wanted to touch on the most, is like how you keep your faith through all of this. It's hard work. It's hard work to realize what is happening. It's hard work to dive into the scriptures that are encouraging and go read the entire chapter to see what it's actually talking about. Because there has been a lot of them where, like, there's been a lot of them with really good hearts that come up to us and they're like, oh, well, you're just supposed to ask what you want and it'll happen. And it's like, oh, yes, there's a lot of cases like that in the Bible, but let's start factoring.
It does happen, but it doesn't always happen.
Right. And if we start factoring in people that had infertility within the Bible, that were people that God deemed righteous, that he deemed chosen, that he deemed to be his, person that he's going to be using, Abraham and Sarah, like literally had issues with infertility. And at that point, they just had, there was a bigger purpose to their struggle.
And one thing to keep in mind too is that when we read those Bible stories, for me, is personal humility, right? Because you have to read those Bible stories and you have to think there's hundreds of thousands, millions of people living at the time. I'm sure a lot of them were struggling with infertility, and almost all of them were not Abraham and Sarah, right? And the reason that Abraham and Sarah were struggling like that is because it was a miraculous sign from God to essentially establish a covenant with them and start establishing the nation of Israel, right?
Yeah, literally.
I'm not that special.
No.
Abby thinks she is, but she's not that special.
No, I'm not.
So kind of having that humility and that perspective to just say, like, if it's within God's power, it's within God's realm to do what he wants. If it's within his will, then we just subject ourselves to that will. And it does.
I mean, you can pray for what you want all day long, but if it is within the will of God,
but at the end of the day, if you make a request, you have to be okay with no.
Yeah, you have to be okay with his will being no or not yet.
And a lot of times it's like, oh, this feels unfair. Like, maybe I shouldn't say this, but
probably not.
I'm just not going to.
Or you can say it real quick.
Why do stupid people have babies?
Oh, that's a hard one. There's been a lot of girls that go through infertility, and it's hard. And I've struggled with this. That's the part, again, keeping the faith is because you literally see people that are constantly just so fertile. And I'm like,
and I don't mean that
in a rude way at all.
I'm not saying that if you have kids, you're stupid or anything.
No,
nothing like that.
Not at all.
It's just a struggle sometimes to watch people cranking out a kid a year like clockwork.
Well, not even that. It's people. Well, it's people that do that and have those babies repetitively and don't want those babies.
Exactly.
That's been a hard one with our journey to figure out. Okay.
Sometimes when I see that, I'm like, man, maybe those people are right. Maybe we are doing it wrong.
You're so tough. No, honestly, it has been a hard journey to figure out. But at the end of the day, when you get sad and low because you're especially right now, it's Mother's Day weekend, we've gotten to the point where we have understood our boundaries and we stopped going to Mother's Day and Father's Day services several years ago because it was so intensely hard to be sitting there and then see kids, it wasn't even the parents, ixnay the parents out, right? Seeing kids that were sitting at the front without their parents and they were like, oh, come up and get a present for your mom and dad. And they're sitting there grabbing their little toy and they're they have no one to go give it to.
As a couple that struggles with having kids, how are you not there
when your kids need you? Yeah.
Just,
so it's been hard.
Yeah.
But we also understand that the more we read in the Bible, we understand that God has a much bigger purpose and plan when it comes to not just, we're not special.
Character building
it's exercise. A character building exercise. Well, not only that is that he's worried about our future. He's worried about our forever. He's worried about eternity. And at this point, I have met so many girls that we have literally become best friends because they're like, hey, I don't know how you keep having faith that God is going to do it. And you could have faith enough for the both of us when I couldn't.
And here's the thing is I don't have faith that God is going to give us a kid.
No, I have faith that he will do what he wants.
That God in that situation will do what is absolutely best for Abby and my eternal souls. Mm-hmm. Whether that be give us a kid or not is irrelevant. Our souls are in God's hands, and therefore important. He will take care of that and do what he needs to do with that.
Right. So at that point, it's and whatever that deems to happen, whatever that looks like. And the thing is that he does give you the desires of your heart as long as they are within his will.
As long as your heart is desiring God.
Yeah, as long as you actually follow after his will.
That's the thing is that we have such a limited perspective as humans where this world's everything we've ever experienced. And God has literally infinitely more experience than we do. So he's
been here way longer than we have.
Yeah, he's able to see into future infinity and decide for us now what's the thing that's going to develop us the best as souls.
Yeah.
So when we give up our corporal form or receive new bodies, go to be with God, he's at that point, if we're living according to his will, we've done everything to successfully live with God, because that's going to be a completely different world than what we're experiencing right now, and we're being developed for that right now. So
yeah, and in our journey, because we haven't had kids ourselves, we've had the greatest opportunity to help develop and like help people that have lost their parents, like kids that have been on our journey that literally have become like kids to us, that literally we love, and we just love them for a season and then they head out, and it's just being there for them, because I have the liberty to give them all the attention and answer any questions they have. Because on our end, we're like, oh, well, we don't have a kid. Well, there's the other side of it where there's a lot of kids that don't have parents and they have so many confusing questions about it. So it's been interesting, but to keep the faith, like she wanted to know, is honestly just whenever I have any questions, I go to the Bible.
Yeah.
And I literally research as much as I can about my direct question. I literally am like, exactly my question on Google, where is it in the Bible? And then I exit out of Google and I go straight to the Bible and read the entire story. So
for me, the way I keep the faith is that C.S. Lewis, and when he was talking about faith, he talks about how faith is the thing that you believe and you know to be right, even when you don't feel like believing it. And to me, that's really good, because there's a lot of times where I'm just like Job's wife and want to curse God and die, right? And like I really do, because there's sometimes where I'm like, you know what, this world is so enormously unfair. There's no way that there's a just God in charge of it, so I'm gonna head out, you know. But at those times, because of the study that I've done, because of all the reasons that I have, I know that intellectually I can't deny God, right? I know what I believe. I have very, very good, solid reasons for believing it, and I can't deny those reasons. So even though I feel a certain type of way, I know that's a feeling and that will pass. And so I just hold on to what I knew to be true before I started feeling a certain type of way.
Yeah. And we can never understand how he rules and how he is just, and how that justice is totally different than what we think we deserve.
Anyway, we're doing the Midwest goodbye thing, so shall we wrap it up?
I think, let me make sure.
Rose hip tea for anyone who is wondering.
And then let's wrap this up with, I think, the last question. I think that answers all the questions. Hopefully that answers all the infertility questions, and you can just refer to this video and listen to all of it. If we missed anything, feel free to DM us or comment down below. The last one is, why did we start posting on YouTube? Or like my little sister says, you really think you're famous, don't you?
Yes.
No. Actually, there is a lovely, lovely little grandma right now that is watching our video, and she will be commenting and she will be calling us, and she will be literally watching this till the very end and like it and leave it running so that we get more views.
FaceTime can be hard for her. So this tends to be a little bit of an easier medium. We can just kind of show the videos and move around. It's not like this is the only way we communicate with grandma.
No, not at all. But it does have captions. It does help.
We call her quite frequently and all that. So.
Yeah, she can slow it down at her pace, and then she can see all the behind the scenes. Because to me, a phone call is nice, but at the same time, like, I want her to feel the journey of farming, because she is the one that inspired us to do a lot of this. She really did teach us a lot. She taught us how to can. She was the one that suggested rabbits. She taught us how she survived when, the economies got bad and stuff like that. We have taken all that advice and literally ran with it, and we honestly post to share a lot of it with her. And then we have gained so many friends through it, and have gained so many loving people that, honestly, there's some people that just want to see if we're going to fail. Good for you. Tell me if you find out if I failed or not.
Followers too.
They're not haters. They just want to know if I'm going to fail. And I do too. I want to know if we're going to fail in this whole journey of trying to start a farm.
Quite.
But it's literally posting because we love interacting with grandma and you guys. But
absolutely.
Let's get out of here because it's an hour and a half. Thank you for watching. And we will see you in the next video. The next one is exciting because we're actually putting birds out on pasture and picking up some food and picking up a lot of food, and then getting a lot of farm stuff done around here, planting plants and stuff. So it'll be an exciting vlog, the next one. This one was kind of a little boring because it's been raining and gloomy, so there wasn't much to do except for paperwork. So We'll see you guys next time.
Forever Farm out.
Forever Farm out. Love you guys.